I'd like to talk about communicating for success. I'm using the term communication because communication is so broad. Often people think of speaking for success or talking for success, but communication is so much broader than that. It's looking at our nonverbal communication, our facial expression, our body posture, our gestures. So much of communication is nonverbal. It also means that communication can include literacy, looking at written communication, and communication writing goes beyond text messaging, but being able to write letters and write so many different ways of expressing ourselves with storytelling and being able to read and understand stories in written communication as well. The other part of communication, variable in communication, is the listening aspect of it. And so communicating for success includes looking at listening and understanding, literacy, reading and writing, and also social communication, or what we refer to as pragmatics, how we use language to get a message across and to understand messages when we receive them. I'd like to start with talking about communicating for success with communicating with children. And that's such an important place to start communicating, that children have a good foundation for learning about language, understanding not only words, but also understanding how language is used and the power of language. That's an important part of communicating successfully, is to know that language, verbal, nonverbal language, the words we use and how we use them have power. They have power, and it's an incredible power. As parents, we understand that communication starts with listening with children. Not only listening to them, which is sometimes hard to do, but they're listening and being aware of what we say and how we communicate with children. Because children are imitators. They will imitate us when we don't even know they're paying attention. They will embarrass us, imitating things that we've said in the exact same way we said it. Maybe taken out of context, but they were paying attention. They are great imitators. But we want to be aware of what we're modeling because they are such great imitators. Often they're imitating things as they're trying to understand what it means. They try out words, they try out facial expressions, they try out gestures. Whatever they see, they're like sponges and they absorb. So it's important to be aware of what we're modeling, how we're using language with children, around children, or even the language they're exposed to, whether it's coming from ourselves, family members, the media, or just the environment they're in. They will imitate it, starting at a very young age. Even before children start talking, they are looking and they're aware and they're touching and they're exploring their environment and they're absorbing it. So their first word may not be mommy or daddy. It may be something that will embarrass you. So be aware of that. Be aware of what language you're modeling for your children, what language you're using, the words you're using, and the kinds of messages that come across, whether they're messages that come across implicitly or explicitly, whether they're very concrete or very abstract. Children are observing them and imitating. We also want to be good listeners ourselves. So modeling that for children in terms of asking them what they said, giving them our undivided attention. We have very busy lives. Giving anybody your undivided attention sometimes seems totally impossible, but children need that. They're asking questions all the time. They're trying to find out and understand the world and asking what and what and what and how and why, and sometimes it can be overwhelming trying to answer all their questions, and sometimes we may give answers that are just just to answer them, but are we giving them the information that they need or that we want them to have? So being able to listen to children, listen to their questions, try to answer them the best way you know how, and give an explanation. Sometimes we use words that are adult words, and children aren't really understanding them. They may use them back, but they may not necessarily understand what they mean. So recognize words have meaning, but for children it's a new word, and that word needs to be explained or defined or demonstrated or put in the context that they can understand. Model being a good listener with your child, with your children. I think another area of communicating for success is looking at communication being more than speech. Communication begins with literacy, with reading and writing. And I know with our preschoolers, they will pick up things in a heartbeat, just words that they see in their environment. McDonald's, Burger King, they will recognize those symbols, they'll recognize the words, they'll recognize them in certain contexts. I remember one preschooler that we had, I didn't even have any idea he was reading at the time, but he was getting ready to run out of the preschool, and he looked up and saw a sign that said exit, and said exit, and headed for the door. He was recognizing those environmental words that he was seeing in his environment. We had one, when a child's not talking, you're assuming they're not reading and they're not understanding. They do pick up on those things in their environment. So expose your child to literature, writing, seeing people using literature, written literature, writing a grocery list, making, even paying bills, online maybe, but seeing the many ways that we use written language, that's an important part of their environment. And always read to children. Children love books. They love having books read to them. They love reading them back to you. They'll make up their own story, or amazingly remember a book verbatim that they can read, that they will read to you or read with you. So to give them reading time to read books, time to make up stories, create their own stories, and trying to write. Children, give them a pen, give them paper, things you want them to write on, not the walls, not the furniture, but give them the opportunity to write. Children love writing. It's a wonderful means of expression, and give their writing words and meaning. So that's important. So our second area of communicating for success is literacy, which I just spoke about. The third area is looking at social skills, what we refer to as pragmatics. We use language in so many different ways that we don't even think of. Children developing start using language to make requests. They start using language to label things in their environment, sometimes labeling them right, sometimes not, but they're learning things have names, they have meaning. There are things associated with things that they want, people in their environment, things that they play with, things that they manipulate. So they start labeling to ask questions or requesting things, drink, mommy, eat, play. And they also start using language to reject. Those are some basic language skills for using language to say no. that negative 2 stage, when they're learning no, they're learning the power of words, not only to ask for it but to reject. They don't want it, or no more, or they want it, say more or more please. So they're learning that power of the give and take of language. They're also learning how to ask questions. They're learning to greet people. They're learning to introduce people, to explore their environment. They're learning to use language to initiate a conversation or a relationship or interaction. They're learning language can be used in many, many ways. That's a great opportunity to expose children to a variety of people and a variety of settings and a variety of life experiences. How do you greet people? They're your friends versus how do you greet someone demonstrating respect, that there's a difference in greeting your friend versus greeting a president or someone who reflects someone of authority or power, that there's code switching involved in using language. The language you can use with your friends and the language that you would want them to use when they're meeting their priest in church. There's different codes for using language, formal and informal. Again, language is power, and language is important in establishing relationships, communicating your emotions and your feelings, and there's a good way to do that, and a socially acceptable way of doing it, and there can be the less socially acceptable that will embarrass you. So teach your children that there are good ways of expressing their feelings and their emotions, and then give them the opportunity to do that. So communicating for success, giving children that foundation. Communication happens in so many different ways. It's important because we're social beings and we want good relationships and healthy relationships with people. Those relationships start at home, and modeling and experience starts in the home as well. So that's communicating for success.